Hi biologists! Let's start by looking at the learning objectives for this lesson. At the end of this section and following the biology syllabus, you should be able to give a simple description of the process of photosynthesis. You should be able to describe the use of artificial light and carbon dioxide enrichment to promote crop growth in greenhouses. What does this actually mean? What are we trying to understand? Well, it's straightforward enough. You have to give a simple description of the process of photosynthesis. You have to be able to describe how using artificial light, not sunlight, and extra carbon dioxide promotes the production of crops in greenhouses. Let's go. Before we discuss the main events in photosynthesis, let's look at a bit of background information. Glucose is a carbohydrate. Do you remember the formula? C6H12O6. Now it is a carbohydrate because it contains carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. There is twice the amount of hydrogen, 12 hydrogen atoms, twice the amount of hydrogen compared to the amount of carbon and the amount of oxygen. 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen and 6 oxygen atoms per molecule of glucose. It can also be represented by the general formula CxH2O in brackets Y. Now, for the mathematicians amongst us, if we let x be equal y and equal 6, so put in a 6 there instead of the x and put in a 6 there instead of the y, what do we get? Well, we will get C6H2O, which stays the same, 6. Now, working out the brackets from a mathematical point of view, C6, 2 6s are 12, so it's H12O6. Hence, we have the general formula for glucose. Can be represented by CxH2O in brackets Y. Now, let's look at the main events in photosynthesis. The first thing we have to realise is that photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplast. Remember, the chloroplast is a structure, S for structure, S in chloroplast. It's an organelle found only in plant cells. This is our diagram of a chloroplast. We are keeping it very simple. Here we have the recognisable oval shape. We could add in a little bit more detail and label the smooth outer membrane and the smooth inner membrane. After that, we are not putting in any more detail on the inside. Now, what are the main events of photosynthesis? Well, first of all, the sun shines on the leaves, shines down on top of the chloroplasts. When that happens, the sun's energy will cause the water in the chloroplast to split or to break up or to break apart. When the water H2O breaks apart, it breaks up into little particles called electrons. They actually have a charge. They have what we call a negative charge. It'll break up into H pluses. Now these are called protons because they have a positive charge and they are hydrogen ions. Do not call them hydrogen atoms. The fact that they have a charge means that they have to be called protons or they have to be called hydrogen ions. Oxygen gas is also released. All of this happens in the chloroplast. This oxygen gas can be used up in the cell where the chloroplast is found, or it can be released out to the atmosphere, out to the air. Do you recall? Photosynthesis. Oxygen out. We had that in our previous video. Oxygen out. So we always remember that oxygen is the gas that's given out in photosynthesis. In the meantime, what happens to these protons? Well, the protons go into what we call a proton pool in the chloroplast. They hang around with their buddies. There's a gang of them together. Note they are protons, so all these hydrogen ions, they all have a positive charge. In the meantime, the sun is shining down on the chlorophyll. The chlorophyll is a complicated chemical. When the sun shines on the chlorophyll, electrons within the chlorophyll will get energy. When they get energy, they will leave the chlorophyll molecule. So they are then to be found in the chloroplast, and they hook up with the protons in the proton pool. Opposites attract, if you like, because the protons are positive, the electrons are negative. So the high energy electrons, the positive protons, and carbon dioxide, which has entered the chloroplast from the atmosphere. Remember, carbon dioxide is an ingredient for photosynthesis. All combine in a chemical reaction to form glucose, which is the whole point of photosynthesis, because it is the way green plants use light, the sun here, to make food, glucose here. What happens to the electrons that were formed when water split? Well, they are passed to the chlorophyll to replace the electrons that were lost originally. So in a nutshell, three products are formed when water is split. Negatively charged electrons that are passed to the chlorophyll, positively charged protons that enter the proton pool, and oxygen gas which is released to the atmosphere. This outline diagram has all the key points needed for a simple treatment of photosynthesis. It should be enough to get full marks at ordinary level. However, sometimes the exam question might say that the diagram is not enough. So, to be sure, my advice would be to give this diagram along with the following simple account. A simple treatment of photosynthesis. Chlorophyll, the green colour, in chloroplasts, the structures, traps sunlight energy. This trapped energy splits water to release electrons, protons, and oxygen. Don't forget oxygen out. The electrons are passed to the chlorophyll. The protons are released into a general pool of protons, H pluses. The oxygen is either released to the atmosphere or it may be used within the cell. Electrons from the chlorophyll are used, along with protons from the proton pool, to reduce or turn carbon dioxide into the carbohydrate glucose, the general formula for which is CxH2O in brackets Y. Sometimes humans can intervene or interfere with the process of photosynthesis. One human intervention is the use of artificial light to promote crop growth in greenhouses. Artificial light sources like electric light bulbs can be used in greenhouses to increase crop growth. The more light there is, the more photosynthesis will go on, the more food the plant will make, and hence the more growth will take place. Therefore, we will end up with more crops. Now, a thing to keep in mind here is the intensity of the light. That's related to the brightness of the light, and the duration, how long it's on for. We could leave this light on for 24/7 and hence we can increase the growth of crops. Another human intervention or interference with the process of photosynthesis is the use of carbon dioxide enrichment to promote crop growth. Carbon dioxide enrichment means enriching or enhancing the atmosphere with carbon dioxide. The more carbon dioxide is available, the more photosynthesis will go on. Now, artificial sources of carbon dioxide can be burning gas in greenhouses, or releasing it from cylinders. This will enhance carbon dioxide concentration and thus increase crop growth. Now that we've reached the end of our lesson, have we achieved our objective? Can you give a simple description of the process of photosynthesis? Can you describe the use of artificial light and carbon dioxide enrichment to promote crop growth in greenhouses?